Thank you everybody for coming, and I think we have a larger crowd today because Susan, you were going to do this, I guess. They
No,
all
I don't
came.
think it's because of me. I think it's because of the movie.
All right, I think yeah, Shining. So let's start from there. Like, so why? It was your choice. Uh,
Well, you named another Kubrick film that I know this one better, but yeah.
that was the only reason for.
Uh, yeah, I guess.
All right, all right. I mean, I'm a big Kubrick fan, so if I was gonna choose one Kubrick film, it would have been A Clockwork Orange.
For
And
me, it would have been Doctor Strangelove.
oh, okay. All right. So what makes I think what I want to start when it comes to Shining is there is very first straightforward kind of horror movie here. Um, Not straightforward, but very different kind of a horror movie here. Um, and this family comes to this hotel, and obviously they're listening to all different kind of voices, and there are possibly ghosts there, and hence in the end we reach where we reach, and that's kind of first layer of simplistic film with these meanings, and then there are so many other different layers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I just want to start from there,
Mm-hmm.
beyond the very first layer of uh, things going wrong in an overlooked hotel where probably there are ghosts. What do we get out of this movie? What are the meanings that you see there?
Let's see. I think the film refers to the way that the past informs the present, that you can't live in the present without the effects of the past. So really the ghosts are about that. I mean, everything in the film is intermixing past and present. Um, and then I think the film is also beyond anything supernatural. I think the film is about an abused family. I think it's pretty clear that the wife is abused and the son is abused. Um, his his behavior of sort of disassociating from himself is, I guess, one way of dealing with an abusive parent. Um, so, and I think that's where all the madness comes from. So yeah, it's about violence, abuse, mixing of past and present, and the violence really extends beyond the confines of the family because there's so many references, or they're subtle, but there are many references in the film to the violence of American society or American culture and American history. I mean, in the opening of the film, you say, "Oh, this is it's a hotel built on an Indian graveyard," and of course, that shows a complete disregard for Native Americans and their rights, their history, and there are many different places in the film where that's kind of referenced, and I'm trying to think of what else.
The baking soda, Calumet
The
baking.
Yeah, there's a lot made of the baking soda, the Native American iconography on the baking soda, and of course the Native American iconography all throughout the hotel.
Right.
So, and uh, I think that Kubrick did a lot in the making of the film to create a huge amount of sort of paranoia and almost madness in the way that he shot. There's a famous story about there's a particular scene that he reshot 160 times. So it's almost like he recreated the madness, the paranoia, and the violence, almost emotional violence at least, in the way that he shot the film. Um, so I think it was Shelley Duvall who plays his wife, and when she was asked what it was like to shoot the film, and she said it was absolutely horrific, and that I think the shoot was like over a year. She said she spent like 12 months 5 to 6 days a week, crying and screaming and looking terrified. So, um, so he did a lot with that, and there's a lot of people that think of the film as being quite misogynistic. I think a lot of horror films are pretty misogynistic and women-hating. A lot of people think that Jack Nicholson's character is really funny. I personally think it's kind of terrifying because I've been in that kind of situation with a man. And you don't understand how paralyzing it is. And she acts like an abused woman. So her character has been changed a lot from the original book, which was by Stephen King. So, but anyhow, a lot of people think of her character as being very weak and vulnerable, and she doesn't fight back. And I guess the original character in the book was much stronger. So I guess that would probably be a fair criticism of the way that Kubrick designed her character or wrote her character. I mean, a lot of people feel kind of annoyed by her at times, kind of feeling like, she's so pathetic, you almost want her to be murdered. And that's been a criticism of the film as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of different themes, but they're mostly about violence and abuse. And that's probably most of what I would take away from the film.
Right. No, I absolutely like what you say. I think the film is about history. It's about past. It's about how we see that our present is built on that past, and it's all balanced. And I like the fact that everything is, in terms of the design of the film, so symmetrical. Everything is like so balanced. All the framings are so balanced, and but underneath there is this. All the abuse and the violence is buried under. So references to, yes, I mean, I was, so it starts with him telling him that there was a graveyard here, and it ends with July 4th, 1921. So it's like the reference to the Independence Day, and all that. So that's one beauty about this particular film, more than probably other Kubrick films, but I shouldn't say that. But it's just like there's so many references and clues that you can just spend days and days and months trying to figure it out. And that also becomes very interesting when you're making a film which has sort of this realist kind of a format, right? It's like everything is happening in so much of everything is shot like that, and then these clues exist which are just so small. It's so you can just very easily not notice them, but they're there. So that's definitely very, very beautiful about this particular film. I want to open it to the audience a little bit. When it comes to, and let's stick to the topic of the history and past kind of becoming, so it's not, and I know you kind of mentioned that it's about this individual particular family, this man being abusive and all that, but it's, and he's so much Freudian. Kubrick is so Freudian. You see mirrors all through the film. Just mirror images, red room, every particular scene. Is the bathroom sequence. He keep crossing 180-degree line. On one shot, Jack is on the right, is on the black. He keeps doing, on the left. He keeps doing that throughout the film. And with that, he's also referencing this unconscious that we have as individuals and we have as society. That unconscious that's now hidden, that's buried, that's our past, that's our history. And so on one hand, at a family level, at a personal level, he's dealing with that unconscious, and other hand, at a very social level, the history of our world we live in, and not just a reference to America. I mean, there are references to Germany and all that. That typewriter he has is a German typewriter, very specific, 1942, and all that stuff. So little clues that you at a first reading would not even get it, but he wants you to keep coming back to the film and try to.
Everything in the film is a character. The
Yeah.
hotel's a character.
Right.
The props are a character. The people are characters. Everything in the film is a character. And he uses like objects. Well, the objects become a character, kind of like Hal is in 2001: Space Odyssey. In this one, I would say the main object or prop character is the typewriter. It changes color over the course of the film, which obviously doesn't make sense. So there's clearly something that he's saying about technology and the power of technology in relationship to human beings. So the one thing about the mirror, and I read a review, or it was, I guess, a critique by Roger Ebert, and he said that a lot of what the film is about also is like that there's no, except for maybe Halloran, who's the African American cook, that there's no one person in the film that, like, their version of reality is all skewed. Like, you don't really know what's reality and what isn't, and that every time that there's some sort of ghost, you see a mirror. Like, he's looking at a mirror, and then he sees a ghost or whatever, and that there are the mirrors are not just a Freudian reference, but they're also like, is this real, or is this a figment of their imagination? And everybody has these different visions in the course of the film, and you never really know whether they're real or they're not real, or whether it's the madness and they're having, they're seeing something that isn't there. So I think that's also an interesting aspect of the narrative.
Yeah, but let me sort of come back to that point, and so by Freudian I mean psychoanalysis in general. And so I'm glad you mentioned the word reality. What is reality? I mean, that's the whole analysis when it comes to psychoanalysis. It's like, what we consider as real has many layers. So there are fantasy layers, there are deep hidden unconscious, which interacts with our understanding of conscious reality, but in a way that we don't understand. And we look at mirror, we look at ourselves, and there is always this disjoint, right, between who we really are. So even like Danny's reference that he has a Tony who lives in his stomach, and he's standing in front of a mirror talking to Tony, but that Tony is him, in mirror other things. So he's using that. That's very, very, very interesting way. Anybody in the audience wants to sort of give any input on the
symbolism in the room that he was locked in. And the brand on the sliced pimentos was Golden Ray, but it was spelled R-E-Y, which means king in French. Golden Ray, Golden King. Sliced pimentos, sliced peaches. He chops up his victims, and he had this potential. He's so angry that his wife interrupts him. He's the king of the house, and all this stuff like that. So
right.
How men get angry because they're the king, they reign, and they get mad.
Right.
And somebody interrupts them.
I'm thinking of something. Do you know about the Apollo 11 story in reference? I mean,
The which story?
Apollo 11, the landing on the moon and kind of faking the images. So I mean, I don't know how much of it is conspiracy theory and how much it is, but there were references that Kubrick publicly accepted that he was that the images that were shown to common public, he was involved in some way getting them faked, and he had that, the whole his whole life and his career and all that, and so the way he talks about the contract, the authorities, do you understand what it means and all that is if you take that relationship, it's pretty interesting. I'm not going to go further into that because I don't know how much of that is true or not, but it's very interesting to in my mind what it was coming was like, when as a filmmaker when you're making a film, it's like there is one story that you're telling, and then there is at a personal level with filmmaker, there is so many things that are going and becoming part of it, which is just interesting to watch. Anyways.
So on that line, I did see the documentary where they showed every nuance in the movie that the Apollo was staged. So at what point in the movie are you reading too much into it?
Well, okay, we don't know, but there are some clear references, right? So if he's making Danny wear a shirt which says Apollo 11, I mean, he's making a statement. It's not like something that's just popping from somewhere. He's definitely making a clear statement, right? And there are several of those references. 237, they say the distance, the studio where the NASA thing was shot was 237. And, there are so many other things. So, I mean, it's like you have to somewhere accept that Kubrick is making a statement. Otherwise, there's no reason for him to give Apollo 11 shirt to
Well,
Danny. I mean,
it's a part of American culture. I mean, there's references to, Roadrunner and Dopey, the dwarf, and there's like tons of, news footage and references to, well, Native Americans. 4th of July, so it could be simply that as well. I mean, no one really knows. I mean, Kubrick was very purposeful in everything that he did. I wouldn't say that those things are an accident, but I don't know if I agree that that was done to make some reference to him faking the Apollo 11 or whatever, that footage. I don't know that I believe that, but
I don't know.
yeah.
I believe that either, but
Yeah.
but what we're saying is that there are references there, and it's for us to read whatever we want to read out of it.
I mean, color is definitely done on purpose. I mean, all the red in the film, there's a ton of red. There's actually a ton of red, white, and blue. So I think that was done on purpose.
I would say everything is on purpose.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, but what the purpose was is we'll probably never know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of culminated with that last shot of Jack in the photograph in 1921, July 4th, 1921, and also goes back to the reference when he's getting cleaned up in the bathroom by the guy, like his name, who killed his family as well. So would that suggest that Jack is one of the ghosts if he has existed since 1921? So I was just trying to make sense of that, or if he just happened to resemble this guy who's in the photograph in 1921.
I think the suggestion is that he's somehow connected to something in the past, that sort of weird dark spirit that's in the hotel. He's now like joined it. It's in some supernatural sense. I don't know if it's sort of mystical. I don't know that it's supposed to make complete sense. I mean, there's a lot of things in the film that don't make complete sense.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the person with the mask that's like on the bed with the purse? You don't really, I mean, it's all just to suggest they're ghosts.
I think my reading of it would be in a way which goes with his overall statement. We are reading history here, so it is. It was Grady was the caretaker or Jack was the caretaker. This is history repeating itself. It's the violence that is repeating itself, and that's how I like to read that. If he was exactly the one, it doesn't really matter because it's just violence being transferred, and yeah, that's probably all. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anybody thought about this because maybe, I don't know how many people were alive before there were cable television, or there was cable television, but they get television reception the whole time during that storm.
Yeah.
And in the late 70s, it was an antenna. So you can't get television reception in a big blizzard. It just wouldn't, particularly in a remote area like that. So, I mean, there's a ton of things that just don't completely make sense. And also, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but the inner geography of that hotel is intensely confusing. Okay, it doesn't make sense, and it changes constantly. So, and I think he did that on purpose to make you feel claustrophobic, just like the the characters. But also it has this kind of supernatural feel to it, because it's like, well, the ghost changing the inner architecture of the hotel, doesn't make sense. So.
Just to add to that also, and all, the outside maze also doesn't make sense the same way. It's like once you're stuck into it, you're just going round and round trying to find. And I think again that's also very psychoanalytical. It's like, how would you completely understand, how many hidden layers of sexual and violent abuse that's there, right? And it's even the references that we see later on, that these people we see in the hotel, the ghosts, they're doing some kind of violent and sexual acts, right? So that's references are there, and which again goes back to psychoanalysis, which again goes back to uh, would you ever be able to find a meaning out of it, or would you ever be able to get out of it? You're just going to go round and round in a circle trying to, and that's also like even his Eyes Wide Shut, right? It's the same thing. Tom Cruise shows up at this place and he's like, he get this little envelope, don't try to find meaning of it and come back here and you'll never be able to get to get to understand it. That's like Kubrick over and over again, I guess, trying to say is like, keep trying, searching for clues and trying to figure meanings. Ultimately, we kind of trapped in this history of thing, and we're just gonna die in center of it, like Jack dies in the end, right? Going round and round there. So it's just
Round in circles.
Yeah.
Do you think that's kind of like what happens though when you get caught in a loop? So that's that's kind of the point of the maze and the place, is it represents this strange loop that happens, into.
Well, I think it's a trap. I mean,
Well, yeah,
I think it's the
that's
trap
the
of
whole point of it.
it's the trap of madness, which traps you in your own reality. So, and they're trapped in their own heads. They're trapped in the snow. They're trapped in the hotel. We're trapped in and trapped in a cycle of violence and abuse. So.
I'll again use a Freudian term to express that. It's like, so he says every repression needs an expression, or it turns into violence, right? So it's also again us watching cinema and looking at these and talking about it and expressing it and dealing with it is part of going back to our history, our past, our problems, our repressions, to be able to somehow deal with it. We need to express it, and if you don't, if you're just dealing with it, it just turns into violence. So that's also I guess one of the important statements here. Yeah.
I found the discussion between, anytime the ghost was talking to Jack, it felt very formal and businesslike. It almost felt like corporate conversation about taking care of everything. It just seemed like almost even out of place in the discussion of everything compared to the way that everyone else talks about just the way that it all felt. It felt like a business meeting almost every time. And,
Kind of like the business meeting at the beginning of the film.
yeah, kind of like
And I'm glad you mentioned that. It's like, so even what he's writing on the typewriter is all work and no play, makes Jack a dull boy. As a very straightforward reference also, and I'm going back to my earlier statement, every repression needs an expression. And what today's society, is it how much of it is allowing us to express what is, what do we need as people to be able to keep doing what do you want to call play? How much we are allowed to play, that's also sort of part of it. But yes, very corporate culture is just working, and everything is a job and all that, and you don't even have time to deal with what as a human being you probably should be dealing with and expressing. Watching movies like Shining and talking about it.
Jack seems to conflict the concept of himself. I mean, especially in that scene where he's on the stairs and his wife has the bat, and he's like, "I'm not going to hurt you, I'm going to bash your brains in." And so it's sort of like oxymoronic statement. And so I don't know if you have any interpretation of that. And then,
Do you want to address that?
Which part?
The
Oh, the contradictory part where he's contradicting himself?
Yeah.
He's mad. He's literally like going crazy. He doesn't even, I mean, he says one thing 1 minute and the next thing something else, you know. So he doesn't.
Don't seem to make any sense. I mean,
Right, no, because
like
he's not
they get
making it.
upset so easily and so quickly. Like, I mean, he's not provoked. His wife just shows up.
Right,
Hi, he
because
goes crazy.
he's well, I mean, number one, obviously there's madness. Number two, we haven't really talked about this, but there's addiction, clearly. I mean, he's an alcoholic. You hear at the beginning of the film, oh yeah, he just, you know, he yanked his son's arm and dislocated his shoulder. You have to yank a 4-year-old's arm pretty hard to dislocate their shoulder. There is something called nursemaid's elbow, but a shoulder you have to yank really, really hard. So the idea is almost like he, you know, the alcohol kind of unleashes this demon. And then you have all these other ghosts there that they're making everybody go mad, literally going mad. Like they can't tell the difference between what's real, what isn't real. They're saying one thing and then another thing, you know, like whatever it is comes, you know, it's just like almost like a stream of consciousness. So yeah, but I think it's madness.
And then about the gift that the cook and the son have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it seems almost as though they can sort of sense something happening.
Oh yeah, it's clearly suggested that they're psychic, that they have psychic powers, and that's why you know, if you take the film literally, he's having, you know, the little boy is having these visions of what's actually going on because he has some sort of psychic connection to, let's say, the hotel or whatever the dark energy is in the place. And it could be read that way. The connection between the man and the boy is definitely considered psychic. The visions that he has, I think, can either be read as psychic or he's having some sort of hallucinations and he too is mad. And then another reading, like I said, is that he's an abused child and he is literally, you know, going mad from that experience as well.
I thought it was interesting too how they're reliving the 4th of July ball of 1921, and then there's a blizzard and I was like, Christmas in July, something very out of place and jarring.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything is jarring. Nothing, like I said, nothing makes complete sense. So, absolutely nothing whatsoever.
Well, they're taking care of the hotel for the winter because it's out of season and nobody can be there. And that's why they closed up and they're no one there. So
Right.
So July 4th is not actually, it doesn't relate to the actual time.
Sure. Well, past, present, seasons are all mixed up. I mean, it's all supposed to discombobulate you. Like everything about the film is supposed to be discombobulating. Even or claustrophobic. Which is also can be discombobulating as well. This hasn't been mentioned, but this is one of the first films that had extensive use of a Steadicam. So all those images of you following the little boy on his like trike, that's all Steadicam stuff. And that also adds to the feeling of like paranoia and claustrophobia and to some degree madness. I think particularly then when you didn't see it as much. It's almost like he's being chased, right? So
even in the opening shot,
yeah.
he does, like the title sequence is pretty much like that. You already start to feel like, where the hell
like
I
something's
am.
like following you,
Yeah.
something's like weighing on you, but it's
Even the credits, the way they roll on the screen is sort of giving you the same kind of a feel, which will take you later on.
But yeah, from the cinematic history point of view, or cinematographic history, this is one of the first films that extensively used that Steadicam, which is just, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it allows the cinematographer, the cameraman, to be carrying like handheld camera, but steady. So it doesn't look like this, you know, if you've ever tried to handhold a video camera. It allows you to move through space, and it almost gives you this kind of floaty feeling. So that's what that is. What did you think of Shelley Duvall's character?
Hate her.
See, no, I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem with the script, and it doesn't reflect on the original novel. I think that is something that I would criticize about this film, is her character. I think she's weak. I mean, I know she's an abused woman, and I know that kind of terror that you have around somebody that will at any moment like lose their shit, who can threaten you physically. I mean, he's clearly abused the child. She's probably been hit. It's not said, but I wouldn't be surprised. But she's so weak. You know, she's so passive. The only thing she does that's strong during the film is puts her husband in that locker. But everything else, I mean, the boy kind of like, through his own ingenuity, you know, figures out how to hide from his dad. She hits him in the head, but she's like swinging this bat like a, you know, she almost doesn't have muscle control. You know, so, yeah, I mean, there are a lot, like I said, there are a lot of people that feel like, you know, God, kill her already. She's so annoying. Well, that's not, you know, that's, you know, I think that's a weakness of the writing of the screenplay.
But what do you think of her casting? Why Shelley Duvall? I'm just a little bit...
Because she's weak and mousy. I mean, compare her to, like, you know, why can't I remember the name of the actress? Well, the lead in the first Alien film, for instance.
Sigourney?
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver. Compare her to Sigourney Weaver. Sigourney Weaver kicks ass. I mean, she is so cool.
Maybe some men pick weak women to prey on. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm talking about from the perspective creatively as a screenwriter. Why would you write a female character like that? Also, it's not true to the novel. And Stephen King hated this film. He absolutely despised this film and said that it was not, he described, there are descriptions of Wendy in his novel that are very different. And Kubrick wrote her into this screenplay very differently.
So one thing on Stephen King, I mean, and that's one thing, like, you know, Kubrick doesn't have to, and he pretty much said F you to Stephen King, that I'm making a movie, your book is done, I got the rights, so get out of here. And even the last sequence where you see, I mean, that's like a reference in several interviews, that, you know, he wrote in Stephen King's book that red Volkswagen was driving through on the streets where our African American cook, when he's coming back, he's looking at that red wagon which is under the truck from the book. So he was very straightforward, telling Stephen King, F you, I'm going to do with this movie whatever I'm going to do, so just don't interfere now. Your job is done. Your first horror movie, I'm making horror book, I was making something else. But so that's one. Secondly, I think every character has a problem. I'm more thinking maybe it's just me, but her casting, Shelley Duvall, she kind of looks like a ghost already. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But her makeup, the way it's done through the film, I think there is something going on, further work on her to make her look more ghastly and ghostly. I don't know.
Well,
maybe it's just me.
I think, like, the main thing that I get out of it, is the, what is the male kind of, archetype for a woman of that time, and you see this, kind of mousy, very much controlled, person, and, I think she's definitely supposed to come off as, weak and timid and almost kind of like a sycophant.
But weak and timid.
She does, she does something that nobody else can do in that film, which is to break away and leave the cycle of violence. Like, Jack gets trapped in the cycle of violence and he dies because of it. He couldn't leave. He was too drawn into it. But she actually got out. She got her kid and got out and left. And to me, that's, you know, she's the only person that was strong enough to do that. You know, she didn't wind up trapped in that hotel like everybody else.
Oh, I disagree. I think it's the son that actually gets them out of it. I think he tricks his father, and the father ends up losing his way in the maze. She ends up kind of finding him as she's running around like this all over, you know, Danny, you know, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but without her,
She's not
I
a strong
mean,
character.
He would have just frozen to death too, more than likely. I mean, he wasn't going to jump into the, you know, the snow machine and drive off.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, why do you find her annoying, but he's not? If they're both equally weak, why do you find her annoying and he's not annoying?
I'm not saying that he's not annoying or not. That wasn't my thing. I'm saying that she plays an archetype of what males thought of women at the time. You know, even though she's weak and timid, she also does something almost miraculous by getting out. You know?
Well, she's in
I
the
mean, she fights
post-fem-
back. She fights back.
And she doesn't have to stay and try to kill Jack. You know,
She has to- yeah.
she wants her son and she wants to get out.
Right.
You know, so she accomplishes her goal. Jack accomplishes his goal. He gets, you know, eaten alive by this thing. You know,
Is that his goal to be eaten alive, or is it his goal to murder
I think
everybody?
it's his goal to be consumed by the violence, and he gets consumed by the violence.
Oh, he was gonna give it, but yeah.
You know, when
See, I think she's a victim mostly.
But in that way, everybody's playing their role. Jack is the corporate worker who has come here to do his job. She's playing the housewife. Playing. I mean, in that way, they're all playing their roles. I mean,
I think primarily she's a victim. She's a victim of the ghost. She's a victim of her husband. And it's her, like I said, I feel like it's her son that tricks the father, and he gets he gets disoriented in the maze, and she just happens to find him, and then they drive off together. That character could have been written very, very differently, in my opinion. So, does he get? I don't know. He gets consumed by violence. I think he gets consumed by madness.
well, I think the two are, you know, products of the same.
I don't think that violence is always a product of madness. It can be a product of, violence can be a product of passion. It can be a product of rage. It can be a product of a lot of things. But
Yeah, but rage is also madness.
not always.
Temporary.
madness is a very complicated
But
word.
she'll always just be olive oil with me.
What? You have to understand that this is a really common theme in horror films where women are victims. Women are victims of violence. So I'm sorry, but that doesn't make me like horror films better. It makes me frustrated with them and with the genre. I'm not saying that all horror films are like that, but it's a really, really common theme, as women are victims of a monster or of something. So does it scintillate me? No, I don't think it's a hook. Maybe it is for some people. It just isn't for me. I still think there's a lot of really interesting things in the film, a lot of interesting themes. I still think it's worth watching. I think it's a very well-constructed film and obviously beautifully shot, and there's a lot of other things worth paying attention to, but that's just, you know, where I stand. I wish that the female character had been written differently.
So here is my question on this. Like, it's so, and this comes from a space always, and this is a very valid space for, I'm gonna quote unquote say feminist, not that way, but like, okay, yes, it's important to, it becomes an important argument that why women are always represented like that, right? Why African Americans are always represented like that, you know, and why any other minorities always represented. It's a very valid statement, right? Wonderful. Now, a filmmaker, when he's making a film or she's making a film, it's, you know, there comes a point where you have to just, okay, I got it. I'm not going to consciously, you know, I'm conscious about that fact, but I still need a character that needs to be humiliated, let's say, because I'm telling a story here. And I need to tell this story this way, okay? I'm sure I'm going to have this as a central character. People are going to come lashing at me. Why the hell you had such a woman in the film? is this a representation of women? And yes, it's a question mark, but then I'm trying to say something about society which is very important for me to say, and in that process, well, I can't be a fair balance equality maker.
The disparity within, you know, male, female, whatever. I mean, it exists because the disparity exists within our societies. I mean, you can't, we can't just, you know, gender equality wash everything away.
Right.
You know, and be like, well, this doesn't exist because I don't want to see it. You know, I think, you know, that's why to me Shelley Duvall's character, you know, and this is something I look at, like everything's an archetype. And, you know, Shelley Duvall's character definitely plays an archetype of women of that era, you know, and how the male sees them. And he does see them as timid and weak and not very bright. I mean, she's supposed to come off like that within the film. You know, I think that's, you know, necessary. When we look back through history, you know, what did people think of this, you know,
But
this
it's a
group of
problem
people?
if people want her dead. Like if you want to create a character, and I'm just speaking from a narrative perspective, that the audience is going to feel for as a victim, then she needs to you need to create a character that people feel sorry for, that you know, if she's a victim, that they'll be sad. What I'm saying is, a lot of people have watched it, and then their conclusion is, she's such a victim, she's so pathetic, that I want her to die. And I'm saying that if that's a common reaction, then there's something wrong in the writing. Okay, I understand that you can reflect on society. We don't have to, you know, write every single female character as like the strong Wonder Woman. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I am suggesting that there was an issue in the writing of this character, that she becomes so pathetic and so weak that it's almost like it has the opposite effect from what I think perhaps was intended. Maybe not everybody feels that way. I mean, I certainly feel that when I'm watching the movie. So, I mean, you know, you could make a film about an abusive relationship where a woman is a victim and perhaps she gets murdered, but then you feel very sorry for her. You feel, you know, sympathy for that character. You don't want to write it so that the person is like, well, yeah, I want to see her face bashed in, you know, gosh, because she's so annoying. You know, that's more of a writing issue.
But thanks for coming. We'll continue doing it. This was our third one?
Yep.
Okay, so fourth one next week. Thank you.